So think of, like, the absolute hardest thing you've learned to do in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a big question right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, maybe it's a complex software program at work or, a new language, or even just figuring out how to manage a team.
Yeah, anything that really pushed your limits.
Exactly. So you've got it in your head. Now, I want you to be totally honest.
Yeah.
When was the last time you actually paused, stepped back, and just patted yourself on the back for mastering it?
If you're anything like most high achievers, the answer to that is probably, well, never.
Yeah, never. And that brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We're looking at this specific cognitive trap that keeps really dedicated learners in a state of just like perpetual dissatisfaction.
It's a massive blind spot, honestly. We are culturally and frankly neurologically wired to constantly stare at the horizon. We only look at the things we haven't conquered yet.
Yeah.
And we treat our past achievements like these checked boxes that just instantly lose all their value the second we check them.
Which is so wild, but so true. So for today's deep dive, we have a narrative source from the Easy English podcast. It's titled, Talk About Your Proud Moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, on the surface, it's a story about language acquisition, but really it's this masterclass in the quiet, completely overlooked power of recognizing our own progress.
Yeah, the psychology of it is fascinating.
Right. So let's set the stage. Our source follows a learner named Emily, and she is like the quintessential high achiever. She's kind, hardworking, takes her studies incredibly seriously.
Very resilient.
Super resilient. But despite having all these objective markers of success, she suffers from this really debilitating inability to feel proud of herself.
Which, is incredibly common, and the source illustrates exactly how her mindset operates, mostly through her reflexes.
Yeah, her immediate reaction.
Exactly. Whenever someone compliments her progress, she immediately deploys these defensive deflections.
Mm-hmm.
She'll say things like, oh, it was nothing, or anyone could do it, or my personal favorite, I'm still not good enough. She just brushes the praise away before it can even, register in her brain.
It's like she treats compliments as a threat to her momentum.
That is a great way to put it, yeah. And to show us the depth of this issue, the text gives us a very specific scenario.
Right.
We see Emily at her desk, and she's studying this advanced English article. And the narrative makes a real point to emphasize that just a couple of years ago, this exact text would have looked like hieroglyphics to her.
Completely impossible read.
Completely impossible. But today, right now, she's reading it, she's processing it, and she understands almost everything.
But she doesn't actually register that victory at all, does she?
Not even a little bit.
Her internal monologue is just, my English still isn't perfect. She completely zeroes in on the, 2 or 3 vocabulary words she didn't know and entirely ignores the hundreds of complex words she processed effortlessly.
Right. What Emily is experiencing here is what psychologists call the arrival fallacy, but it's mixed with a really healthy dose of the hedonic treadmill.
Okay. Unpack that for us a bit.
Sure. So the arrival fallacy is this illusion that once we reach a certain goal, we will finally feel successful and happy.
Like, I'll be happy when I finally learn this.
Exactly. But because she's on that hedonic treadmill, the moment she reaches a new baseline of competence, like reading that article, her brain just immediately normalizes it.
The goalpost just completely moves.
The goalpost moves. And this relentless focus on the next goal doesn't just make you unappreciative, it actually actively overwrites the neural memory of your past struggles.
Wow.
You literally forget how hard it used to be.
It reminds me so much of updating your phone's operating system.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Because for months, you deal with this laggy, glitchy phone. Apps keep crashing. It's so frustrating. Then, the second the new software update is installed and those old glitches are gone, you completely forget you ever even had them.
Mm-hmm. It's instant amnesia.
Instant.
Yeah.
Within 5 minutes, you're furious about some tiny new quirk in the interface. You just instantly adapt to the new baseline and demand perfection from there.
That's exactly how the brain treats skill acquisition.
But I have to ask, is this constant dissatisfaction just the inevitable price of being a driven person? Don't we need that perpetual hunger, that slight misery to keep pushing forward?
Well, it's a fair question, and it's actually the exact rationalization most high achievers use to justify their own anxiety.
Oh, totally.
But the answer is no. Dissatisfaction might provide like a short-term adrenaline spike, but it is a terrible long-term fuel source.
It just leads to burnout.
It leads directly to burnout. And to see the mechanics of how to fix this, we really have to look at what happens to Emily next in the source, because she doesn't break out of this loop on her own.
No, she needs an external disruption. And her English teacher is the one who provides that disruption. It happens during a regular class. The teacher walks in and writes this seemingly simple prompt on the board. He writes, "What is a moment in your life that made you feel proud?"
And the contrast in the room is immediate. The other students instantly gravitate toward these macro milestones.
The big stuff.
Right. One talks about the day they graduated from university. Another brings up landing a major new job. Someone else discusses navigating a massive family crisis.
They're pulling out the big, socially validated life events. But when it gets to Emily, she just draws a total blank. She sits there genuinely confused and actually says out loud, "I don't think I've done anything special."
Which is so painful to read.
It's so frustrating as an outside observer, because we know she studies constantly. But her teacher does something brilliant here.
He really does.
He doesn't argue with her self-assessment. He just asks her one question. He says, "Do you remember your first day learning English?"
And that is the pivotal intervention. The teacher understands that Emily is trapped in her current baseline. By asking about day one, he forces her brain to change its anchor point.
Okay. Change its anchor point. Explain that.
Well, human beings are actually terrible at absolute evaluation. We only really understand things through relativity and contrast.
Right.
So when the teacher forces her to look at day one, she actually laughs because she suddenly remembers that she couldn't even introduce herself back then.
Wow.
And then the teacher lists her current reality. He says, she holds complex conversations, she reads books, understands podcasts, communicates globally.
He essentially forces her to look at the before and after pictures side by side.
Precisely. And it just shatters her blind spot. The teacher says, "That sounds like an achievement to me." And Emily is left completely speechless because the objective contrast is undeniable.
Her brain just can't argue with the data anymore.
Exactly.
And that interaction sends her home to do some literal digging. She goes into a drawer and pulls out her old English notebooks from years ago. And as she turns the pages, she's looking at her own handwriting, reading these incredibly basic sentences. Things like, "Hello, my name is Emily. I like coffee."
Yeah.
Seeing those basic words suddenly brings back the visceral memory of how terrifying every single interaction used to feel. And it makes me wonder if imposter syndrome is so prevalent among learners. Is actively seeking out our past, embarrassing beginner steps, the actual cure?
I mean, it is arguably the most effective, neurologically grounded cure we have.
Really?
Yeah, because imposter syndrome thrives in a vacuum of context. When you're constantly comparing yourself to the experts who are ahead of you, your brain just concludes you're a fraud.
Right, because you're not them yet.
Exactly. But when you actively hold the tangible, physical evidence of your own incompetence from 3 years ago, like those old notebooks, you ground yourself in objective reality.
But you literally hold the proof.
You prove to your own nervous system that your current skills aren't a fluke. Growth wasn't magic. It was mechanics.
Okay, so if it's about mechanics, what exactly was she doing during those years to bridge that gap? Because looking at the notebooks shows her that she improved, but the source also dives into the specific materials she used.
It does, yeah.
And what really strikes me is how incredibly unglamorous the whole process was.
Oh, it's a perfect study in the architecture of cognitive load. The source outlines several specific tools she used, and each one targets a completely different mechanism of learning.
Okay, like what?
Well, for instance, in her early days, she used a book called Short Stories in English for Beginners. And the text notes, she couldn't just breeze through it.
Right.
She had to sit there with a dictionary, agonizingly looking up words, rereading the same paragraphs over and over again.
Which sounds completely exhausting. I mean, why wouldn't she just use a translation app to scan the page and get the gist of it instantly?
Because of a concept called desirable difficulty.
Desirable difficulty.
Right. If learning is too easy, like if you just scan a translation app, the brain doesn't bother to encode the information into long-term memory. The sheer friction of stopping, opening a dictionary, finding the word, and plugging it back into the sentence context that creates deeper neural pathways. The struggle is exactly what makes the memory stick.
That makes so much sense. The friction is the feature, not a bug.
Exactly.
And then the source mentions she moves to a book called English Vocabulary in Use. But it emphasizes that she only learned a few new words a day. Not a massive list of 50 words, just a tiny handful.
which is exactly how she managed her cognitive load. The hippocampus, that's the part of the brain responsible for consolidating new memories, it has a strict daily limit. If you try to memorize 50 words, you overwhelm the system, and by the next morning, you've forgotten 48 of them.
Right, you just lose it all.
But by restricting her ambition to just 3 or 4 words a day, she ensured a near 100% retention rate. It feels slower in the moment, but it compounds massively over a year.
So she's basically avoiding the fire hose approach.
Exactly. And as she advanced, she shifted her methods to reduce that friction. The source notes she started using Learn English through stories and listening to a program called Effortless English while going on daily walks. She would repeat sentences aloud, sometimes whispering quietly to herself, sometimes speaking confidently.
So she's pairing physical movement with language repetition.
Yes, which lowers the affective filter.
What's that?
It's basically the psychological wall of stress and anxiety that blocks language acquisition. By walking and listening to stories she enjoyed, she moved from explicit, forced memorization into implicit, natural absorption.
But, if we step back and look at that whole process, struggling with a dictionary, strictly limiting yourself to 3 words a day, whispering to yourself on a walking trail, it all feels like a massive grind.
It is a grind, you're right.
Right. So if the actual process of growth feels like this constant invisible struggle, how on earth are you supposed to spot a victory while you are still in the trenches?
Well, the hard truth is you usually can't spot it in the trenches because daily progress is invisible. Your brain literally can't perceive the difference between Tuesday's skill level and Wednesday's skill level.
It's too small.
Way too small. But the source answers your question by showing how all those invisible, compounding micro efforts eventually collide with an unscripted, real-world test.
Right.
And that test becomes the definitive proof.
Okay, so this is where the essay prompt finally triggers a specific memory for her. Emily is sitting there trying to write about a proud moment, and suddenly she remembers something from 2 years prior. She was at a museum, and a tourist who was clearly lost approached her and asked for the exit in English.
A completely spontaneous encounter. No dictionaries, no preparation.
And the text says her heart started beating wildly. Her mind was racing. But she didn't freeze up. She answered the tourist, gave him clear directions to the exit. He said, "Thank you very much," she replied. "You're welcome," and they walked away.
And how long did the source say that entire interaction lasted?
Less than a minute. A 60-second exchange. How does an interaction that brief carry so much psychological weight for her?
Because it was the ultimate test of spontaneous competence. Think about it. For years, her learning was confined to controlled environments, right? Her bedroom, her notebooks, her classroom.
Safe spaces.
Very safe. But out in the wild, when the environment was entirely unpredictable, her brain effortlessly retrieved the vocabulary, structured the grammar, and delivered the communication.
She didn't have time to doubt herself.
Exactly. She just reacted. And the dopamine loop of realizing, wait, I actually just did that, is incredibly powerful. It proved that the language was no longer just something she was studying. It was a tool she possessed.
But here's the part that drives me crazy.
What's that?
She had this monumental realization of her own competence. It felt amazing in the moment, and then she completely forgot about it for 2 years.
Yeah.
She just filed it away and went right back to agonizing over her grammar mistakes. Why did she just toss that memory in the trash?
Because of how human beings encode significant memories, we are completely conditioned to prioritize events that come with external validation.
You mean like the macro milestones the other students talked about?
Exactly. When you graduate university, society gives you a ceremony, a piece of paper, and a party.
Right.
When you get a promotion, you get a new title and a paycheck. Those external markers signal to the brain, hey, this is important, remember this. But a 60-second interaction with the lost tourist in a museum doesn't come with a certificate. It is a purely internal milestone. And unless we make a conscious, deliberate effort to log it, the brain just discards it to free up processing power for the next immediate problem to solve.
It's like spending 3 years laying the bricks to build a house by hand, and the only thing you ever take a picture of is the ribbon-cutting ceremony at the end.
Yes.
You completely ignore the thousands of individual bricks you perfectly leveled along the way. We assume a proud moment has to be something that impresses other people.
And the source argues forcefully against that assumption. A proud moment doesn't require an audience. It doesn't need to be famous. It only needs to matter to the individual who put in the work.
Which brings us to the ripple effect of her realizing this. because the next week in class, the students have to present their essays.
Right.
Emily stands up, and she doesn't just read a sterile, sanitized list of her academic achievements.
Yeah.
She actually tells her story. She talks openly about her fears, her constant struggles, the embarrassing mistakes she made, and finally, she shares the 60-second story about the museum tourist.
And the reaction of her peers is the most telling part of the whole narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The room goes completely quiet. Then the validation pours in. One of her classmates raises a hand and admits, "I always focus on what I can't do." Another student nods and says, "Me too."
That shared vulnerability completely changes the dynamic of the room. It proves that this amnesia for our own progress isn't just Emily's quirk. It is a widespread epidemic among learners.
It really is. Emily realizes she isn't alone, and that realization allows her to confront the ultimate core of her problem.
Which is?
For years, she actively avoided feeling proud because she equated pride with arrogance.
Oh, wow.
She genuinely believed that if she paused to say, "I did a good job," she was claiming to be perfect or signaling that she was better than her peers.
And I think that's a fear a lot of us share, honestly. We are terrified that if we acknowledge our success, we'll lose our edge.
Mm-hmm.
We think pride will make us complacent or worse, obnoxious. But the text redefines it completely.
Yeah.
Emily discovers that being proud does not mean thinking you are flawless. It simply means recognizing your effort.
It's an accounting exercise, really.
Yeah.
It means looking at the ledger, appreciating the growth, and honoring the very real, very difficult challenges that you managed to overcome.
It's keeping the receipts of your own hard work.
Exactly.
Paid the price in frustration, in time, in desirable difficulty. You are fully entitled to look at those receipts and say, "Look at what I built."
Precisely. And acknowledging your past doesn't sabotage your future. You can still maintain your high standards.
Right.
You can still possess a burning desire to reach the next level of fluency or competence. But as the source illustrates, effort deserves respect. If you don't respect your own effort, your brain will eventually stop supplying the motivation to keep trying.
So as we synthesize all of this for you, the listener, the core takeaway is pretty clear. So many of us are spending our lives furiously running on that hedonic treadmill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chasing the next achievement or the next skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And while our eyes are locked on the horizon, we are completely ignoring the miles of difficult terrain we just successfully navigated.
The destination is just a temporary marker. The journey is where the actual cognitive and personal transformation takes place.
Which brings us to a very specific call to action, drawn directly from the challenge in the Easy English podcast.
Yeah, I love this part.
Take a moment today. Actually, pull out a physical piece of paper, open a fresh note on your phone, and write down one moment that makes you proud.
Just one.
It's just one. It doesn't matter if it's massive or incredibly micro. It could be a 60-second interaction from yesterday or an invisible milestone from 10 years ago. Do it because, just like Emily, you have navigated more complexity than you think, and you have achieved far more than you are giving yourself credit for.
And as you write that down, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we habitually refuse to log our past successes, if our default mode is to obsess only over our current flaws and deficits, are we accidentally training our own nervous systems to believe that we never actually succeed at anything?
Oh, man.
Right. What if the quiet act of recording our small wins isn't just some fluffy, feel-good exercise, but the vital neurological fuel we require to actually reach that horizon?
That is a lot to think about.
It really is.